liberty and justice for all.
No presentation scheduled for this evening?
No.
No? Okay. We don't have any public to be heard for us tonight? Okay.
No.
Next, we'll move on to Board of Education Subcommittee reports.
Okay, no reports.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to Superintendent's report.
Okay, under Superintendent's report, I shared with you in my update, but wanted to also say it here publicly. I know there's actually, every day there seems to be new talk in the Department of Health world of how we're going to deal with quarantines, isolations. Test to stay is the one in particular that I know has popped up, and they brought it up just before the holiday, the winter break, and then over the winter break they already modified it to some degree. It has not been adopted, to my knowledge, formally by the Department of Health, but I think it will be. I met with the Department of Health just before the winter break to talk about, what it entails to do this program, and basically we just have to put certain procedures in place and share that with the county. And the big thing with the test to stay, and I'll just quickly explain test to stay, is that kids who are out on quarantine would have the ability to come to school every day so long as they were symptom-free, and they would have to test, which originally was going to be 7 days in a row. So all 7, so after the 7th day, if they tested negative each day, they could stay in school and then stop testing after day 7. That since Department of Health, following some, I think, CDC guidance, has reduced that to 3 days. So you could test either on day 0 or day 1, and then day 3, and then day 5, 6, or 7, which is helpful on the front of supplies, testing supplies, which has been an issue. We did get a supply from the state, as many may have known. Over the weekend, we did have, on Sunday, for the 3-hour window we had 324 test kits picked up. Since then, we've had a few others call to say, hey, we weren't able to make it. They came into school and picked up the test kits. So we're probably approaching 350 test kits that may have been picked up that came from the state. We can use those supply of tests for tests to stay that we still have. And so I know I'm going to be meeting with some school staff tomorrow to kind of talk about the logistics. It's one thing to say, hey, that's great. It's another thing, can we actually do it? The testing supply, the only problem I have with the testing supply is while we may have some to get it started, there's no guarantee that the testing supply is going to continue to flow and be available to us. But I'm kind of optimistic and willing to try to consider this. But again, it would require people getting their kids to school before school starts. They cannot ride the school bus in to come in and get tested. The parents would have to drive them in. And I would say we're probably going to have to try to set something up. Again, I haven't talked logistics, so what I might say here might change after a meeting tomorrow or further meetings down the road here. But we are definitely going to consider that. I think it would be, there's some other things I wish they would take into play, but this one has some potential to certainly keep kids in school that are otherwise quarantined without symptoms. And a lot of that is a result of being close contacts on our school buses. So there's a range of proximity of wherever you sit on a school bus in relation to a positive case that ends up getting kids quarantined, and right now it's 10 days. Now I know there's discussion, and I know that the county executive came out with a press release yesterday regarding reducing isolation periods from 10 days to 5. That has not been approved in the county, and it hasn't been approved from the Department of Health. And I don't, that, at least the latest document that I received late this afternoon specifically states that unless a local Department of Health has adopted it, there's no change to the school setting yet. So it would still be 10 days quarantine as we're doing right now. So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, especially with these home test kits. What that means, I've got to believe with those home test kits going out to every school in the county here, Department of Health has got to be inundated with testing results that may otherwise weren't getting to them. And I mean, it may slow down after this initial surge of people getting tests in their hand and perhaps testing positive. So we're still trying to work on the logistics of how to manage these home tests that just became available to us. We received them on January 1st. We distributed them on January 2nd. We don't have a lot of guidance with the start of school on January 3rd on how to deal with the home tests. So we're working on those logistics, and we just continue to ask parents to be patient with us, be patient with what they may hear in the news and what we're actually able to put into practice. But I know the Department of Health is working on it and trying to work with us to, you know, I think, deal with the whole surge in the county, but also help schools and keep kids in school. I put out a notice, which I do, which I think since after Thanksgiving, you've probably received a Parent Square notice from me every day, indicating, you know, where we stand on the positive COVID front. I hope you don't find it annoying. I just want to keep you informed and know that, you know, it's happening here, and you can kind of use it as a measure for your own, you know, personal use. But yesterday I put it out that there was 20 of them over between December 23rd and you know, January 2nd, or January 3rd actually, which I was hesitant, I would say, to put that out, but I'm like, well, if you really look at the numbers, that was 7 days of school that we had during winter break that we weren't in session. We had 20 positive cases. You divide that by 7, it's approximately 3 cases a day, which if you look at all the emails I've been sending, we've been anywhere from 2 to 4, sometimes 5 a day. So, you know, today I think there was, we had 7 between 2 buildings. So, and I would expect those numbers to probably go up. We'll continue to monitor, you know, we'll stay in person is our goal, and we'll continue to monitor our ability to stay in person, which will a lot to do with staffing, you know, right from bus drivers to staffing in the buildings, from support staff to teachers, our ability to cover anybody that has to miss due to quarantine or other illnesses. You know, that's really what this all hinges upon. So the things that have certainly worked for us this year has been, we don't have to, as long as everybody's wearing a mask in the classroom, we don't have to quarantine from the classroom unless kids were closer than 3 feet together. And I think since this year we've had 1 case of that from the classroom. All our other quarantines have basically either been positive or quarantined from the buses, which has been significant and has been a concern of all our schools in the county. But that's where we're at. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a whirlwind update, and it is a whirlwind because it seems to update almost daily.
Quick question. On the test kits, it's a one-time use only, right?
Correct.
And they use it only if the child has symptoms?
Well, the initial intent is probably somewhere in the middle or later last week. The governor announced that he wanted home tests and wanted every kid. Initially, they wanted every kid tested before coming back to school. And I don't know if that was necessarily if they planned to have that they must be proof of a test, but that went out the window quickly. And plus, we haven't had tests in our hands yet, and the state, I don't think, had the test yet when that first came out. And then, fortunately, it backed off to make every effort to get, you know, give the parents an opportunity to pick up a test with the concept of it would be a good idea to maybe test on, you know, they got it on Sunday. A good rule of thumb might have been test on Sunday. If all was good, fine. Then maybe test middle of this week, a little bit later this week, to see if something changed, depending on if we had a late exposure in the break.
Do they need another test kit to do that?
No, there's 2 kits. There's 2 tests in each kit.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm just talking. That's just a practical use of it that I'm coming up with. The intent was that everybody, you know, hey, get tested to see where you're at, and if you have it, then stay home.
Okay.
If you don't, but it wasn't tied to whether you could attend school yesterday or not, which is fortunate because that just would have been the case.
So it's a short-term solution?
Yes, because there's not going to be an endless supply of these tests continuing to go out to people, which in theory, and if we were really ready and able to manage all this testing, you know, it has some good merits, but it's just the resources to really, you know, run that program successfully is difficult. So we're going to see what we can do with Test to Stay and see if we can't get something in line for that. But you know, that could be a logistical issue as well. well, if you want to catch me after the meeting, absolutely.
And about the test is set.
Okay, yep, catch me afterwards. Thank you.
Quick question, Ron. I
Yes.
don't know if you know this or whatever. In our district, do you know data-wise, do we see more positive cases in one building versus another, like versus elementary versus middle versus high school? Only for me, because I think I always feel like I get the notice that says there was a positive case in the elementary school. I feel like I get that a lot. I didn't know if we see it
You
more,
know-
and I don't know if that's even standard in any other
On a-
counties, but in our
On
district.
a general, brush over the stuff, and people could, again, can kind of follow it, you'll notice that we're like 2 in the elementary, 3 in the middle school, nothing in the high
High
school.
school,
That
right.
might go for 2 days, and then it flips. It's
Then it
elementary and high school, no middle school for a couple days, and maybe a day or 2 or something with the middle school. It hasn't, it's really kind of, I kind of copy and paste, because you probably read and
Yeah.
just really read the first sentence, because that's where the changes are. Everything else is, there's the same protocols, but yeah, when I make that change, it's sometimes just a matter of
Just-
switching high school out for elementary and middle and whatever, but.
Will employees qualify for a test kit, or they haven't decided that?
That we haven't, yeah, right now the intent was to give that to the students, and then this test to stay is, that's my problem, is we have a supply right now. And we can use those to, I believe, for test to stay. But if we start handing them out, then we're not gonna have a supply. We might get into the test to stay program and say, oh, it worked till the end of January, we gotta shut it down. So initially, let's say you had 5 kids on quarantine. That's, over the course of 7 days, that's 35 tests you have to give, if you had to do it every day. Well, since they cut it to 3 days, that's now, with 5 kids, that'd now be 15 tests that you have to give. So that's not only really the supply of the tests and the inventory of the tests may drive some of the decision, on what to do, or the hopes that if we don't get a supply of tests and we get into test to stay, and that supply is dwindling, but hopefully the numbers are also coming down. Hopefully we're going to hit a peak soon and then start coming down like last year. We're obviously well above where we were last year in the county, but you can see the similar trend. The lines are higher, but the trend is still there where it was last year. Our hope is that it'll come down like it did last year, which probably won't be go closer to February or mid-February, March at the latest maybe.
Thank you.
Yes?
So, the home test that we're giving out, there's no obligation by the parents or anyone to report the results of those tests.
Yes. And
There
they
is
also,
or there isn't?
when I hand it, yes, there is.
So they report negative tests too?
No. So we were given, if you test positive, we were given a website or email and a phone number that I passed out, a small sheet of paper with the test kits on Sunday, indicating what they should do with a positive test. So that's what should happen. We're certainly on the honor system that does happen.
I would recommend, if we're gonna do the test to stay, which I think is gonna be much more effective to keep our kids in school, we keep as many tests as we can to make sure we have supply, because that's 700 tests that we just gave away that we can't use now for test to stay. I don't know the logic behind handing out all those tests when you can't report on the positives or the negatives. I think that's part of the problem. with all
So if
these
we
home
do that,
tests.
if we administer those tests, even though they say home test kits, and we administer them here, we have a
That's what
reporting.
I'm saying, and then we know
Yep.
what the results are. When they're at home,
Yeah.
it's the honor system, which
Yep.
I'm sure most people are honorable and do what the right thing is, but when you talk about infection rates in the county and everybody gets scared about those infection rates, well, what about the number of negative tests that were taken that weren't ever reported? I think that affects your positive test results that are reported. I just don't understand.
Well, right, it certainly will mess with the numbers, with the statistics. Because if all is getting reported as positives, or a higher percentage
Right,
of positives, and
that's
not
what I'm
test
saying.
given, right. It makes the rate look higher.
Is there, you would send out of 7 days, three tests?
So now, right, three negative tests, yeah.
Well, My wife tested positive on the 7th day, symptomatic as well. So cold symptoms, negative, 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 7th day positive.
Yeah.
So you could, if, I don't know what 3 days would be chosen, but it's possible somebody can become ill and have symptoms on the 7th day.
Right.
So it's just.
It is, and obviously,
I don't know,
any of
it's
this.
logistics, you're
Right,
right.
and obviously, the vaccination rules still apply. If you're vaccinated, considered a close contact, but are symptom-free, you don't have to go through any of that. It's if you're a close contact and determined to have to quarantine, then yes. And the same rules would apply, is you should always continue to monitor your symptoms. Just like, let's take COVID out of the picture any year. Monitor yourself for a cold, for a flu, something that otherwise you should not attend school because, you can spread something to others, or you're just not well enough to attend school. Obviously, before, with a little bit of a cold, a little bit of the sniffles, kids might come to school, but, and that's been fine for years, but now when we have a variety of symptoms that could potentially mean you have COVID, we certainly, our defenses have been much higher for that.
Don, I had a quick question. Are we still public to be heard via email? Or
Yes.
It's email only, correct?
They can call as well. Yeah.
They can call or email the board clerk,
Okay.
Marie Goodman, and then come and actually stand up and speak.
All right, so, okay, I wasn't sure if we were back to the email or if we were, okay.
And Mike, just to give you
Yes,
an FYI, my husband tested positive for 60 days after he was sick with COVID. So, I think sometimes logically there's no rhyme or reason why or when, but they tested Brian every 24 to 48 hours for 60 days. He was still positive. So we were told when he was very sick that the test, they call it viral litter. So the test doesn't know the difference between live virus and dead virus. And until his immune system was able to clean up all the dead virus that was still there, he continued to test positive. Even though he couldn't spread the virus, because none of it was live, he still, because of his viral load, it's easy, 60, 70 days he tested positive. And even though technically he's negative, you're right,
Yes.
correct, but his test, and they still treated him though, like, back then it wasn't early in the stages of COVID, but they still treated him like he was positive. As a matter of fact, they weren't gonna let him come home until he tested negative. And we used to cross our fingers every day, like today's the negative day, and it never was for probably, I want to say it was 65 days. So I was hoping it would get more sophisticated by now, so. Okay. Any other questions on superintendent's report? No? Okay, fine. Okay, we have nothing under old business this evening. New business, I'll read 8.1 to 8.15 as a consent agenda. If anyone has any questions or would like anything pulled for further discussion, please let me know. 8.1 is resignation. 8.2 is resignation. 8.3, appointment of laborer. 8.4, appointment of substitute teacher. 8.5, appointment of substitute teacher. 8.6, appointment of substitute laborer. 8.7, extracurricular activity 2021-2022. 8.8, approval of senior class trip. 8.9, substitute.
Don, the class trip, I had a couple questions.
You have a question on 8.8?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, no
Thank
problem,
you.
we'll pull that. Thanks. 8.9, substitute pay rates for school-related professionals. 8.10, corrective action plan to the extra classroom activity fund. 8.11, corrective action plan to the management letter for the 2020-2021 audited financial statements. 8.12, treasurer's report of balances, November 2021. 8.13, resolution authorizing payment of bills approved by the claims auditor. 8.14, approval of minutes of the December 14th, 2021 meeting. And 8.15, Committee on Special Education and Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations. I know Mike already asked for 8.8 to be pulled. Does anyone else have any other questions or would like anything pulled for further discussion? Okay. I'll need a motion then then to approve 8.1 to 8.15, excluding 8.8.
So moved.
Tony, I need a second, please.
Me?
Mike?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I will need a motion to open discussion on 8.8.
So moved.
I need a second, please. Tony?
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Just briefly, I know this was last month and things are a bit foggy for me. I know that Ms. Babby came in and gave a presentation. It was excellent, actually. When we vote on that, when we have that conversation, are we stalemated and is it 2 per room or will it be 4 per room? Is that rule's in stone already, that it will be 2 students per room?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if that's, I mean, is that, I guess I'm a little late to the party on this one, but in terms of having a discussion, I didn't know if, we're gonna be going in June, numbers should be lower. I think we talked about this before, correct? With those numbers possibly going down in June, having to be an issue with some expenses. I know people have reached out to me about the money part of it, the 2 per room. If it's 4 per room, if the parents can decide or have a say in that, it's cheaper. But I just was kind of kicking that up again. I didn't know if that was pretty much voted on that, correct? Okay.
Well, yes, that's the protocol for the trip, is
Sure.
what we're doing. And what you're approving here is just they're granting them permission to take the trip simply because
Correct.
they do miss a day of school.
Okay.
So,
All right.
yeah.
I'm good.
All set?
Yes.
Any other? Oh, go
I have
ahead.
a question. So I raised the concern the last time regarding the COVID protocols. And I've heard Mr. Wheelock speak several times that, when it comes to extracurricular activities, we shouldn't treat those students any different than we treat the students during the regular day. And I believe on this trip, we should follow the current protocols of the school district at the time of the trip. I don't see why we're changing the protocols at this time that are different than the protocols every other student has to follow, whether they're in school, whether they're extracurricular, whether they're on a field trip, why we would allow one group to have a different set of protocols.
Okay.
So I will not be able to support a vote with having different protocols. I don't think that has been consistent of what we have said to our staff and to our students since the pandemic started.
I mean, I guess we're looking at physical distancing in the classrooms. Busing would be the same as we bus now, currently to school. I guess the wild cards is the ability of a place to eat, the ability to socially distance there. I know if we've had people go out on field trips here to different places, we've asked them to consider that and certainly, follow that to the best as we can. I can't say the restaurants are going to be able to provide 6 feet of distance for every one of our kids going in there. But all of those will be met with the, I think with this trip, certainly, to say that they're going to have the strict rules and the strict supervision, that we're able to apply during the school day or have a better ability to apply during the school day will be a little more difficult on the trip. But I think certainly the intent and the practice and what we try to enforce throughout the trip is certainly one of the things I've asked them to do to the best of their ability. Because my concern is certainly this is in June. They have a prom in June. And they have a graduation in the end of June, and we want every kid to be able to walk graduation. And I get it, we're putting them in a spot to make decisions, and I hope if somebody's graduation being able to participate doesn't get jeopardized due to a quarantining due to one of these events. But I think the practices are laid out, and I think the supervision is will be as thorough as it can be, given that there probably will be some limitations based on some venues. But I know they're outside for a good portion of it, which helps. And I do see the the eating inside maybe one of those areas that's a little difficult to get a place to work with you on.
Well, my point isn't really about the eating, because what you just said is if another group goes out of the school district and has to eat, they're gonna try to accommodate, but they can't always in a restaurant. I understand that,
Yeah.
so that's the same.
Right.
I'm more concerned about the mask mandate. If they should be wearing a mask indoors, if they go to Syracuse and they go to eat at Wegmans, when they go in to eat at Wegmans, they can't maintain 6 feet distance. They still sit down to eat. They take their mask off to eat, just like they do here in the cafeteria.
Mhm.
But when they get done eating, they put their mask back on, and they get back on the bus and come home wearing their mask.
Mhm.
I think the same thing should happen if we're in Maryland.
Mhm.
That is my concern. And if it changes in June, and the protocol changes where you don't have to wear a mask indoors,
Right.
then we follow that.
Agreed.
So that's my only thing. I think it should be stated that we should follow the current protocols the best we can
Yep.
at the time of the trip.
They'll get reinforced. Thank you.
Ron, speaking of it, did they decide where they're going?
Not yet. They're just waiting for approval, and then they'll decide one of those
They
two
had
trips
two
that you
options.
had. Yep.
Okay. Just curious.
Any other discussion on 8.8? If we're all set, we can go ahead and vote. All those in favor to approve 8.8? Aye.
All right.
Opposed?
Nay,
You're opposed or abstaining?
I oppose.
Opposed. 3 to 1, no? 3, should be 4.
Four.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize, 4.
I just want to make sure I'm right.
Okay. My fault. You just tell me straight to say I apologize. Next, we'll move on to miscellaneous topics.
Just a quick one, maybe Charlie can help me out. Any movement on the building project since the vote? What transpires now or
Well, yeah, the architects have they submitted the information? They have submitted the plans for the
For the roofing.
to SED. So we are certainly on track to have that started this summer and completed this summer. And we've met with the architects a couple of times with that. And also today, we met with them and the CNS companies for the energy performance contract to discuss the scope and the timeline for that, because they'll have to coordinate with the architects to do the design and the plans for SED submission. So hopefully this summer, we will do both roofing work and lighting replacement throughout the district. And they've started on phase 2, the rest of the capital project, basically, to put those plans together for submission to SED, anticipating approval sometime maybe late fall, November, December of 2022, so that we can certainly hit the ground running summer of 23 to get phase 2 done. But yeah, everything's going as we hoped it would at this point. Next meeting, there will be a resolution for the board to approve the bonding for the project. So that will allow us to start borrowing as well.
hopefully we can do that before the rates go up?
Yes?
No, we have no control, do we?
I have a question for this.
Thank you, Charlie.
So, when my daughter's class is told that she'll be written up if her mask goes below her nose, what exactly does that mean? Written up? I'm just curious.
Usually that means a discipline.
Okay, so a disciplinary report, and then also being sent to the principal's office. So that's a thing, correct? That would happen?
If they say that's what they're gonna do, then most likely that'll happen.
A student got a sticky note that said, the next time your mask is on incorrectly, you'll be leaving the room. So that people will be removed, correct? I just want to clarify. That's a thing, right?
I can't speak to that.
Because I'm not an administrator, I'm on the board. So again, I don't supervise anybody here, and that's not my role, and I understand that. That's all, I just want to know.
No, I would
That's
say if
fine.
those are concerns coming home that are specific to a building, then I would certainly start with the building administrator. if that's the
That'd
procedure.
be the high school.
Yes.
And Mr. Reed's a great gentleman, and I have a lot of respect for him, and I would definitely ask him that if he was here. I'm just, because that's not just my child, that's other people's children. But I just want to clarify, and I appreciate the time, I don't want to hold this up.
Gotcha.
The EPC, where do we stand on that? We haven't picked the company yet, right? We haven't voted on that yet.
Yes,
Yes.
we did.
Oh, we did
You
pick
did that, yep.
before the
Yes,
December.
before the capital vote, yeah. So that's underway as well, and it's a matter of getting the finalized scope, because they're still doing some of their audits of, they kind of give you a general picture of what it's gonna, what they're going to do and the cost, and so then they come in and actually do a very thorough scope of that, which we hope to have done by the end of January, and get our architects working on the drawings, plans to get them submitted to SED, so that they can get their work going in the summer, and hopefully be done in the summer, or if they need a little extra time, then after school hours in the fall.
I think I missed that date. Because I don't recall.
Okay, I don't
It's
know.
not K, it's the other one.
It's CNS. Yep.
Yes, that's
Yep.
right. I think I was not here for that, and that's why I didn't know. Sounds good, thank you. Yeah.
Ron, do we have any idea, like those test kits that supply-wise, if you said this, I apologize. But do they have any idea of when we're getting more or how many we can get, or if there's nothing on that, right?
No.
So it's hard to kind of implement something like, that we're not sure when
Yeah.
we're getting more.
Because when we were discussing this before the break, we had probably 80 tests.
Right.
Which really, and before the break, there was a 7-day rule you'd have to test. That would not last very long. We did get 2 boxes of, I think, 90 test kits in each from the county, and then we received 933 from the state this past weekend. So, that did change the supply a little bit, but then we don't know what's available after that. I think the state might be looking at a different vendor that might have a little more promise to deliver, but I don't know that yet.
Any other miscellaneous topic? No executive session this evening, then?
No.
We're all set then? I'll need a motion to adjourn at 7:34. 7:34, starting with that, Tony? I'll need a second, please.
I'll second it.
Mike? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.